In Australia, the retreat that lasted 2 hours, the fashion platform listing outfits at a massacre memorial, the sunbather at Bondi who did not look up, the ticket prices slashed in half, the empty tables, the gift bags worth $200, and then, days after all of that, Harry got on a train, alone, and went to Ukraine. Not to Los Angeles, not back to Montecito, not to wherever Meghan was heading next, to Kyiv, on an overnight passenger train from Poland, into a country that is 4 years into a war, into a minefield near Bucha, where civilians are still being killed by unexploded Russian ordnance, alone. And the timing says everything. If you want to understand what is actually happening between Harry and Meghan right now, not the press release version, not the team statement version, the real version, subscribe right now. One tap, because this video is going somewhere that most channels are not willing to go, honestly. Let's start with what we know, because the facts of this Ukraine visit are remarkable on their own, before you add a single layer of interpretation. Harry arrived in Kyiv on Thursday morning after traveling on an overnight passenger train from Poland. He spoke at the Kyiv Security Forum. He called on the world to not become numb to Ukraine's war with Russia. He said this is a war about values, not just territory. News Now. On the second day, Harry visited demining teams near Bucha, the town that became synonymous with Russian war crimes in 2022. He observed and tested equipment used to clear landmines and unexploded ordnance. He was shown drone technology and AI systems being used to detect explosives. He saw robotic devices used to neutralize tripwires. ABC News. He supported his Invictus Games Foundation in Ukraine, where the number of severely wounded military personnel is growing at an alarming rate. News Now. And the Diana connection. The Halo Trust, the demining charity, was famously supported by his mother, Princess Diana, in Angola in 1997. The Halo Trust employs 1,300 people in demining work in Ukraine. It is their largest operation anywhere in the world. News Now. Now, here is where it gets interesting, and I want you to hold two things in your mind simultaneously as we go through this, because this story has two completely different shapes depending on where you are standing when you look at it. Shape 1. Harry is a man who has always been most himself in service, in the military, in the Invictus Games, in the landmine work that connects him to his mother, and the Ukraine trip, genuine, documented, not a business trip by any account, is Harry being exactly that person, not the Sussex brand, not the Netflix deal, not the wellness retreat. Harry, the soldier who turned 41 and still gets on overnight trains to walk through minefields because he believes it matters. One reporter who covers the royals put the distinction plainly. While Harry's Australia trip was part royal, part fundraising for themselves, the Ukraine visit is not a business trip. It is the Invictus Games and the Halo Trust. Full stop. That distinction matters because it is the clearest possible illustration of the gap that has been visible between Harry and Meghan throughout this entire Australia tour. The gap between the person and the brand, between service and commerce, between who Harry actually is and what brand Sussex has been asking him to be. Shape 2, and this is the one that the timing makes impossible to ignore. Harry flew to Ukraine days after one of the most publicly scrutinized tours he and Meghan have ever undertaken, days after the outfit at the massacre memorial was listed for commission, days after the retreat that lasted 2 hours, days after the sunbather who did not look up became the image that defined the whole trip, days after the questions about the gift bags and the sold-out claim and the organizer's financial history and the $34,000 worth of jewelry at the women's shelter. And he went alone, not with Meghan, not as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex presenting a united front to the world, alone, on a train, into a war zone. Now, I am not going to tell you what that means, because I don't know. I do not have access to the conversations that happen in the house in Montecito. Nobody does except Harry and Meghan themselves. But I can tell you what it looks like from the outside, and from the outside, it looks like a man who needed to go somewhere that had nothing to do with fashion platforms and wellness retreats and ticket prices and gift bags, somewhere that was about something real. Sources close to the couple, and these are tabloid sources that should be treated with appropriate skepticism, have been saying for months that Harry has grown increasingly uncomfortable with the commercial direction of their joint operation, that he has found Hollywood to just be a bore, that his interests have moved toward the Invictus Games, toward veterans, toward the humanitarian work that connects him to his military past and to Diana's legacy. The Ukraine trip is the most visible expression of that reported discomfort that we have yet seen, because it is not a joint appearance. It is not a brand exercise. It is Harry, alone, doing the thing that reporters are now openly saying he has always been most suited to. And here is the thing about that observation that I think deserves to be said honestly. It is not a criticism of Meghan. It is not a vindication of the critics who have spent years trying to paint Harry as a man controlled by his wife. It is something more complicated and more human than either of those framings. Two people who love each other can want different things. Two people can build a life together and discover over time that the shape of that life fits one of them better than the other. That is not a scandal. That is just what happens when human beings grow and change and discover what they actually need. And when those two people are also business partners, when the marriage and the brand are the same thing, the divergence between what each person needs becomes visible in a way that would stay private for anyone else. Harry needs Ukraine. He needs the minefield near Bucha. He needs to stand where his mother stood in Angola in 1997 and connect the landmine work across the generations and feel like what he's doing with his position actually matters in the most immediate and life-saving sense. He needs the Invictus veterans, the people who lost limbs and eyes and pieces of themselves in service, and the specific kind of meaning that comes from sitting with them. Meghan needs the wellness retreat, the lifestyle brand, the As Ever Jam and the newsletter and the AI fashion platform and the Netflix show and the Hollywood connections and the celebrity adjacency and the building of something that operates on her own terms in a world she was not born into but chose with full deliberateness. Neither of those needs is wrong. Neither of them is shameful, but they are pulling in different directions, and Australia made that more visible than it has ever been. And Ukraine, happening days after Australia, alone, without Meghan, in a war zone that has nothing to do with any commercial operation, is the most visible expression yet of a man following his own compass. Harry also called for steadfast American support for Ukraine, saying this is a moment for American leadership, a moment for America to show that it can honor its international treaty obligations, not out of charity, but out of its enduring role in global security and strategic stability. GeoNews. That is not lifestyle content. That is not a wellness retreat speech. That is a political statement made at a security forum in a capital city 4 years into a war. That is a man who knows what he believes and went somewhere dangerous to say it out loud. And the contrast between that Harry, on a train, in a minefield, at a security forum, calling for global accountability, and the Harry of the previous week, standing at a wellness retreat watching Meghan leave after 2 hours to go to the rugby, is so specific and so visible that it has started a conversation that neither Harry's team nor Meghan's team appears to have a clean answer for. Is brand Sussex still one brand, or has it become two people moving in different directions who happen to share a title? That question doesn't have an answer yet, not a public one, not a confirmed one. But the timing of the Ukraine visit, the speed with which Harry moved from the retreat and the sunbather and the one-off controversy directly to a minefield near Bucha, suggests that he had somewhere he needed to be, something he needed to do that had nothing to do with any of it. And that somewhere was a long way from Montecito, a long way from wellness retreats and AI fashion platforms, a long way from everything that the Australia tour was and was not. The timing says it all, not because it confirms a split, not because it proves the critics right, but because it shows us as clearly as anything in 6 years that Harry and Meghan are not on the same journey right now. And where those two separate journeys end up, whether they converge again or whether they continue to diverge, is the real story, and nobody knows the ending yet. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Was Ukraine a statement or just a long-planned trip that happened to follow a difficult week? I genuinely want to know where you land on this. Subscribe if you haven't, because the next video in this series follows both of them, Harry's path forward and Meghan's, and the gap between those two paths is getting harder to ignore. See you there.